All right, welcome everybody. Today we have Patrick Sweeney, Capital Projects Manager from PBOT. Sweeney, Project Manager. Sorry, Fiona Kennedy from a Project Manager at TriMet. They're going to be giving us an update on the Southwest Corridor Light Rail project for transportation alumni, which we've been doing since 2000. Thank you for joining. We have 80 plus people joining us online today. There'll be 10-15 minutes at the end for questions, so please hold your questions until the end. And without further ado, Patrick and Fiona. There you go.
So before I get started, I always kind of like to know who my audience is. So I'm curious, how many of you are students of PSU? And how many of you would say you're sort of design professionals, interested in the project, design or engineering? And how many would say they're sort of community members wearing their community hat today? Okay, great, cool. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. We are going through a really fun moment in the project where we're doing a lot of outreach right now. I've seen a lot of other flyers or tweets. So I'm going to share a little bit about what process we're at right now. And then I'm going to reserve about 20 minutes for Patrick to talk about a related project that touches Southwest Corridor as well. So the Southwest Corridor is a really, the region in general is going through a lot of growth. You may know and feel it on a daily basis. By 2040, we're expected to have about 400,000 people living here. 260,000 jobs. That's a lot of growth. Good growth, but we have to make sure that we are planning for it correctly. So one of the things that our project team is always thinking about is just how we can really facilitate that so that we don't have a ton of congestion, that we are making better mobility connections, that we are supporting our climate action plans, etc. And I skipped over, but I wanted to mention that this project is a big partnership. I think sometimes people think it's a TriMet project or a Metro project, but this project is actually a partnership with all of these people, so ODOT, PBOT, City of Tigard, City of Tualatin, Washington County, Metro, TriMet, City of Durham. It takes a lot of people to coordinate a project of this scale. Sorry, I keep facing the wrong way. So I'm just going to talk about what makes this project unique. I think you may know a lot about transportation planning in the region. This is probably something you've seen before. It's the 2040 growth plan that Metro helped us adopt as a region. So everything that we do is really founded upon this blueprint. It really helps strategize how we're going to grow as a region. And so you can see the green is that Southwest Corridor light rail alignment. We're really trying to build out that capacity network. So this is our system in general. You can see the green dashed line is the Southwest Corridor extension, which would be an extension of the green line. So you could theoretically have a one-seat ride all the way to downtown, Rose Quarter, over to Gateway, down to Clackamas Town Center. And I find this fun. It's just sort of an evolution of the transit system in general. So we've done this before. We've built a lot of projects. How can we really start thinking about what can we actually do better this time around? So before I launch into the details, I just wanted to mention sort of where the project is at. It's been going on for a while now. We started in about 2011 as a region talking about building out this extra line in the Southwest Corridor. We have been in the environmental review phase. We're expecting to complete that later this summer. And concurrently, we're working towards a November 2020 vote. So part of the funding for this project would actually be, it needs to be approved regionally by voters. So that'll be on the ballot in November 2024 as part of the regional transportation funding measure. If that passes, we would basically start construction about 2022 with project opening in September 2027. So just some stats on the project itself. Right now it's about 13 stations, 11 miles long, It would be a 30-minute ride from Bridgeport into downtown Portland. And right now we're estimated about 37,500 trips per day by 2035. And it would have about 7-minute headways weekday peak. So what I find really interesting about the project as an urban designer is sort of all the other stuff. I think TriMet builds light rail, but there's so many other things that we touch and communities that we're going through. And so how can we really add value as we pass through there and connect all these active transportation systems? So right now, I love this picture actually of the orange line because it sort of shows all those things coming together. Bridge, new light rail, integrating streetcar movements. You see the buses moving there, bikes going by. It's really such a great photo, just all that stuff in one place. So our current project actually proposes about 10 miles of new sidewalks, bi-directional. A lot of the Southwest corridor, as you know, doesn't really have a lot of basic infrastructure like that. We have about 6 miles of improved bike facilities, 1.6 miles of a shared transitway. And so that is actually similar to this configuration where you have a right-of-way that's only for light rails, but you can also let buses use it. So in our project, north of Capitol Highway, buses would basically be able to use that same right-of-way to get an expedited service, frequent service into downtown and avoid a lot of congestion. And we also have right now about 2,000, up to 2,000 park and ride spaces in our project. So thinking about, how this project is different than other projects that we've built in the past. Housing and equity is obviously a huge thing. I think, our lessons learned from other projects is that once you go through and provide all this new infrastructure, the land value rises, people get pushed out. So the great thing about this project is that those discussions have started pretty early on about how can we actually strategize to keep people in the community that they already live in, but actually grow the opportunities for more housing within the whole corridor. So there was a whole Southwest Equitable Development Strategy formed that partners committed to, and they actually made an agreement. This is to do 950 new units of housing within the corridor. So I can talk more about that when we get into some of the slides, but that would be looking at opportunities where there might be leftover land, or we have sites that are already publicly owned. How can we actually start thinking about zoning and planning for that increased density to truly create better transit-oriented development. So this is just a quick timeline of some of those steps that have happened to get to where we are today. You remember in I think it was 2018, voters approved a pretty substantial affordable housing bond. So how are we're trying to work with our partners right now to get all those pieces to sort of come together in terms of timing. And then obviously we're always trying to support, local climate action plans. We have a very green corridor that we're going through, but there are problems and things that we can actually enhance when we go through there. So one of those things is stormwater. The corridor itself has a ton of topography. It's really cool streams and interesting ecosystems and open spaces. But the actual soils itself along the corridor are really bad. They're not very permeable. So thinking about how can we actually treat a lot of that stormwater so that we're not just dumping tons and tons of water that ultimately flows into the Willamette. And thinking about just in general how to get people out of cars and into a more sustainable form of transit. So then just think about the economy itself. Projects that are this big have some actually pretty good economic benefits to them. Right now, the projections are about 20,000 jobs could be created. That's design field, engineering fields, construction, and then trying to actually leverage funding from the federal government. So this is a big project. What happens is that when we get all of our regional and local funding together, we can then go to the government, federal government, and say, we have this really competitive project. Here's why it's competitive. Will you help us build this? So right now, that number is about $1.3 billion that we would be asking for the federal government So what I'm talking about today is really looking at our conceptual design report. There's 2 copies of them going around. This is all posted online, but this is something really fun that we've been working towards. It's basically a completely visual narrative of what the project looks like and some of the benefits that come with it today. It's very different than the environmental impact statement that I mentioned. That is very technical, tons of metrics. Not really, it's a very engineering document. So they're 2 very separate things. They're both incredibly important. As I mentioned, the environmental review, we're going to complete in about June this summer. And the conceptual design report, it's all up and running, and we're really hoping to get feedback right now because it's really important for us. We're at about 10-15% design, which is really early on. We're basically saying, here's what it looks like to date. Could you let us know, does this serve your community? Is this making the right connections? Really trying to validate the scope that we have included to date. So I'll just say with that, I would encourage everyone to check out our website. We have a really thorough online open house right now. We've also been doing in-person open houses. There's one on Monday down in Tualatin, and there's another one on March 14th that is Spanish speaking. So we're hoping to really get more input, and the online survey closes I think March 27th. Is that correct, Josh? Great. So the project itself is really aligned on sort of 4 core principles that we feel are essential to the core of the project. So these things that we've defined, we hope will live on for many years as we are making more tough decisions on, we need to cut scope or we need to do X, Y, and Z. We can revisit these and make sure that we're still fulfilling those very core values that we have as a project and as a region. So I'm just going to do a quick look at some of the other things that we look at and consider. History of the corridor is obviously really important. I mentioned there's lots of different communities up on the right. Just a quick graphic of that and actually figuring out how to serve those communities. Thinking about stormwater, and trails, and ecosystems, and open spaces, and making sure that we're being really sensitive as we touch those, and making sure we're connecting things from a regional perspective. Station access is another thing that is really important. I mentioned a lot of those streetscape improvements, but figuring out how do we actually define those, where their value is, and what their nexus is with the light rail project is something that we study. So the project itself has adapted this modal hierarchy on the left, and that's really thinking about the station area itself. So this actually is pretty similar to the PBOT modal hierarchy that was adopted earlier this year. So thinking about pedestrians obviously is the most important connection. Bicyclists, transit, other technologies that are coming online, and cars. So these and bus transfers are incredibly important, to connect to light rail as well. So one of those things, and how am I doing on time? Am I okay? A couple more minutes? Okay. One of those things that I mentioned is really important to prove that this is a very competitive project is to actually create those sort of ridership predictions. And this is something that I find really fascinating. So Metro has a tool. It's a regional tool to basically study all of the existing land use and bike lanes and existing networks of streets to project how many people would ride this specific alignment that we've defined in 2035. So this gives us a good idea of each station area. How many people should we expect? What mode might they be coming in on? You can see on the circle on the right, about 65% of people in total would be accessing their station by foot. So it just really reinforces the importance of a lot of the new sidewalk and bike infrastructure that we're building. So this, a lot of you are probably familiar with Barber Boulevard. This is sort of just a snapshot of where it is today. You can see there's a lot of room for improvement. There's no sidewalks. There's very small and discontinuous bike lanes. The traffic speed is pretty quick through here. So really thinking about what are all those opportunities and how can we actually capture those in a project. So one of the unique things that I just wanted to mention on this part of Barber Boulevard, basically north of Barber Transit Center, is that the city and ODOT have done a jurisdictional transfer agreement. So what that means is that currently this right of way is owned by ODOT. So it's, it's very car oriented today and in the past. But with this jurisdictional transfer, the ownership of that street would actually go to PBOT. So this project is basically bringing it up to PBOT right-of-way standards, implementing all those bike lanes and sidewalks. So this image is just sort of a snapshot of how all those pieces are going to come together. There's a lot of different things on the table that we're studying and talking to the community about. A lot of amenities that go into a project of this scale. If you're interested in any of these topics, I definitely mentioned that conceptual design report goes more into depth on a lot of these elements. This is just a quick look at the streetscape cross-section along that Barber stretch that we just looked at with the aerial image. So you can really see. So we do have some race protected bike lanes. We have rooms for pedestrians and sidewalks, an actual urban green street canopy, light rail in the center, 2 lanes of traffic in each direction, and a suite of lighting improvements and whatnot in that sort of hunting area zone. This is a quick peek at some of those bike facilities that I mentioned. We do have about 6 miles of race protected bike lane in that thick green line from Barber Transit Center up to the intersection of NATO right now. So we're looking at how can we actually design great intersections that would benefit not just bicyclists but also pedestrians. Thinking about actual pedestrian connectivity, that same stretch of Barber, thinking about how can we actually apply some of the city standards. So there's a document called PDX. It's a great document that provides guidance on, if you are a pedestrian and you're walking along a major arterial, should you have to wait 2,000 feet to cross the street? Probably not. So we're really trying to look at where can we increase that that permeability across these roadways so that it is just a much better pedestrian environment. So I'm going to wrap up. I'm going to look at 2 quick station areas. This one is the Gibbs station area, just north of NATO, where we are trying to, it's kind of the most complex station area because we do have that shared transitway. So if you look at the platform configuration of those yellow bars, that's one of those areas where both buses will be coming in and light rail will be coming in. So they unload on different sides. And then we have a huge amount of ridership that is predicted to go up to Markham Hill. There's about, I want to say 14,000 jobs up on the hill today. And we expect a huge amount of ridership. So really in the project, it was committed to that we need to provide some sort of better access to get up to Markham Hill. There's a huge, if you're familiar with it today, there's a huge canyon, lots of topography, a wonderful open space along Terwilliger Parkway. So we studied many different options of could that be a tunnel? Could it be a staircase? Could it be a bridge and elevator? Looking at all these different options. And we actually created a really fun green ribbon committee with different design, engineering professionals in the community to help us whittle down that list of all these different options. So these 2 are the 2 that are on the table today. We're looking at, where would they actually have the least amount of footprint and impact up to Markham Hill. And the other station area that I wanted to look at was Bridgeport Transit Center. So this is right in that crossroads area where you have I-5 and Taylor's Ferry and Barber all sort of coming into a big star. So this is a unique site because this property is actually owned publicly. So it's a transit center today. There's quite a bit of park and ride today. There's an old structure where sort of that center island is. And so we're looking at this sort of for the current view and then the future view of what are some of those housing opportunities. Because this is publicly owned land, we already own it, we already know that it has potential. So we've been working pretty closely with the city of Portland, and they have a whole process called Inclusive Communities process, where they're going through the community and trying to really reimagine, what new zoning and what amenities could take place there. Not just housing, but an actual mixed use development as well, to serve the community and help us grow as a region. So I'm going to use this as a chance to turn it over to Patrick Sweeney. And he's going to talk about one of our sort of related projects, the Ross Island Bridgehead.
Thank you. Thanks, Fiona. How am I doing on time? Do I have 15, 20?
20 minutes.
20 minutes? Okay.
Step on that black mat.
Don't step on the black mat? Okay. Try to keep my,
It moves the camera.
I'm trying to stay in the zone here. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Patrick Sweeney. I'm a capital project manager for Portland Bureau of Transportation. Good to see a lot of familiar, friendly faces, people I work with and used to work with, and for everyone online, welcome. So I would like to talk to you about the Ross Island Bridgehead Natal Parkway Main Street conceptual design project. And why are we doing this study? It's a once in a lifetime opportunity to work in an area of Portland that it's a mess. There's been a lot of major infrastructure that has kind of torn communities apart. And with working with TriMet and other regional partners with the Southwest Corridor, it's a major intervention in a part of the city that needs help. So we are going to try to leverage that change and make more good things try to happen. So there's a big opportunity with Natal Parkway, as it is right now. Natal Parkway from Barber Boulevard to downtown, like around Harrison where the streetcar crosses. If you can get your mind there right now, it feels like an old segment of highway. It doesn't feel like a real street. You can't cross it. You can't walk across it. It's got not great sidewalks and so on. And then also looking at the Ross Island Bridgehead and really understanding how that got to be the way it is now and how it could be better. And then through that process is understanding the impacts that, previous generations made decisions to build stuff the way it is, and unpacking that and understanding the lessons learned for how we can make it better. The Ross Island Bridgehead today, I'm just going to walk you through a few key things. So this is obviously I-5 here. This is the bridge. This is what we refer to as the bridgehead. And there are three key things I would like you to note about how this works. For traffic on I-5 headed north to get onto the Highway 26 East, traffic goes around, goes down, cuts through this neighborhood to a ramp that goes here. So I've been living in Portland for over 20 years, and my first apartment was up the hill this way. So I used to use this a lot. Every single time I've ever driven through this area, I feel like I'm a trespasser. It's like, why? This is a highway, state highway to state highway connection. I'm going through a single family neighborhood. This just does not feel right, okay? So I'm just a driver passing through. Imagine what it's like to live there. You have this regional traffic pulsing through your single family neighborhood. So that was something that was done a long time ago. We want to think about how we can address that. Another key aspect here is a lot of traffic coming from I-405 and Highway 26 uses all of these over, under, merge ramps. It's 1950s highway era design. But you can see the overall footprint of all this. You can't walk from here to here. You can't even cross this road, Natal Parkway, to get from this historic neighborhood to this historic neighborhood. So this whole area is fractured and fragmented from previous decisions. Whoops, this thing will trigger. All right, so regional and local benefits. It's pretty simple. We're going to remove ramps and we're going to build streets. And a lot of that is focused right in here. And looking at that a little closer. So the brown represents the configuration of ramps that's there now. This gray represents what will be built after they're torn out, is a grid network of multi-street streets. So I want to point out that that movement from I-5 North that went through the neighborhood right here, these go away. So that regional cut through, gone. So that movement is replaced by going like this to a signalized intersection to flow onto the Ross Island Bridge. And then a lot of traffic that now uses Nato Parkway and does these curves and over-unders and merges to get on Ross Island Bridgehead East, that traffic is now going to be split up. So the Highway 26 to Highway 26 connection stays on this Kelly-Arthur corridor. And from the south, from Marble Boulevard, like Oswego, that traffic stays in this zone. So right now it's all mixed in here, but the new design helps get the traffic split apart to reduce the impacts on these neighborhoods. And I have some diagrams that help explain that. Might need a little assistance here. Okay, thank you. All right, so the way that these benefits are felt, right now, the yellow represents the traffic patterns now. This is a 26, a Highway 26 connection. You know, it uses Kelly and Arthur, but then it also uses NATO and these combination of ramps to connect Highway 26 to I-405 and Highway 26. With the proposed design, the majority of the traffic stays on this Kelly and Arthur connection. So it takes that out of the Larry Hill and Corbett neighborhoods. And then as I explained before, the yellow represents this loop through the neighborhood to get on Highway 26 East. That is removed, and this is the new traffic moving now. So this project, I should say that one of the other reasons why we're doing this project is early on in the Southwest Corridor project, the light rail alignment was being debated and, you know, should it be on Barber, should it be on NATO when it comes out of downtown Portland to get further southwest. And as part of the discussion about having the light rail on NATO that's what really kind of triggered this. If we're going to even be close to this area, we have to fix Ross Island Bridgehead once and for all. So that's part of the impetus that got us into this bigger conversation. And the couplet concept, as I showed you, we refer to it as a couplet because it's two one-way streets. But so we are working with the neighborhoods right now in a public engagement process to get their feedback, not only on the bridgehead ramps, but then also now you're going to have these new streets connecting to NATO. What's the future of NATO? That section from Harrison and downtown all the way to where it meets Barber Boulevard. So to really get to the right plan to move forward, you got to understand how we got here historically. So the city transportation and land use planners haven't always done things right. You know, so this part of Portland, downtown, the grid of streets used to flow continuously down to South Portland. Some rich fabric of Jewish, German, Italian, other immigrant communities. And a lot of them got wiped out for freeways and highways and urban renewal in the South Auditorium District and so on. So we need to learn from that and try to redress these past harms. So, okay. All right, go on next slide. I'm going to give up on this. Okay, I'm going to walk you through the timeline of what happens in South Portland. So we're right here, up near the park blocks. This is Portland 1886. You can see that continuous grid of streets and neighborhoods. Next slide. 1910, 1923, big advancement in streetcars, interurban transportation, more railroads, lots of warehouses and freight serving next to the river. This is a big, important connected neighborhood. Next slide. 1927, the Ross Island Bridge is built, and there's some changes that are starting to happen. There's cars now, and there's starting to be some changes in streetcar interurbans. Another thing interesting to note, this is a Barber Boulevard, was once a railroad grade, a long time ago. All right, next slide. 1935, the railroad is gone, Barber Boulevard becomes a road. The first hints of a interchange start to happen at the end of the Ross Island Bridge. You're starting to see the buildup of this big street framework. Next slide. 1942, Harbor Drive is built. So Tom McCall Park, downtown, that all used to be highway. And then that connected onto Front Avenue, interchanges with the Ross Island Bridge, bigger road frameworks. You'll notice all the streetcars and interurbans are gone. Next slide. And in 1950, it gets bigger. And you can start to see the pattern of the current Ross Island bridgehead footprint is just like separating and pushing the neighborhood all apart. And, and then the result of the interstate highway movement, I-405, I-5, Markham Bridge. So what was once a continuous neighborhood urban renewal is just the neighborhood's kind of all fractured up. Okay, so we have a chance to take another look at this. All right, next slide. We're working in combination with TriMet on the Southwest Corridor project along Barber. We're working with the Bureau of Planning, which is looking at how can the new or future land uses, how can they be best adapt to the change in transportation infrastructure so that it grows in a way that Portland is known to grow. And multimodal streets and inclusive communities. So the concept design, as I kind of alluded to before, removes the ramps and builds a couplet. And these are multimodal, a couplet streets. And instead of over-unders and merges and high-speed curves and super elevation, we're using traffic lights. What's interesting about the traffic lights is that where you have traffic lights, you have pedestrian crossings. You don't have that today. Like there's none. So this is a sea change in how this neighborhood can move and interact just from one side of NATO to the other, but then also north-south from the NUNM campus, south into the Corbett neighborhood. Next slide. And in particular, I kind of pointed this before, but for westbound traffic coming off the Ross Island Bridge, this here to the north, this is the 26 to 26 movement. And then Ross Island Bridge south uses one leg of the couplet to go west, and the other leg of the couplet to move east. And then, as I mentioned before, the neighborhood cut through traffic, we got rid of it and returned local streets where local streets should go. Okay, this is one of my favorite slides because you can see the footprint of what's there now. So this is, the footprint in total is well over 3 acres, but just look at this 3 acres. Okay, next slide. So with a better use of streets, this is 3 acres of redevelopable land, and it's already publicly owned. This is like a gold mine, right? We have a need for housing all over the city, and here we have 3 acres of public land that will become more accessible with public streets and streets that have sidewalks and bike lanes and so on. Next slide. So that's what Bureau of Planning is working with. So this public process I'm telling you about, this is Bureau of Planning and PBOT going out together to do these joint workshops. we're talking about how things move on the street. Your planning folks are talking about how it looks on the sides and how big and how they interact on the sidewalks. So it's really, we're thinking and envisioning the future totally in 3D, not just how things move horizontally, but how it's going to look vertically and frame the streets on the sides. And, this is a concept diagram. There's a couple different concepts that are being explored, but a grocery store that's accessible to the neighborhoods. There's not much access to fresh food in these neighborhoods at all. So that's an important piece that is really important to the community. With the NUNM, National University of Natural Medicine campus, these are new neighbors across the street that they would otherwise, it was a ramp now, so like they had neighbors across the street. So, that's an interesting opportunity for the university to think about if they want to, there are potential expansion plans, and then affordable housing. If the city, if you're thinking about the opportunity to build affordable housing across the city, this is a pretty good spot. You're close in, you're surrounded by tons of services. So 3 acres of publicly owned land. I don't have to explain that very, very much. I think you understand the benefits. Next slide. Okay, so I explained a lot about the bridge to NATO, like reconfiguring those ramps into streets. Now, look at the opportunity of what about NATO from Harrison to Barber. So I'm thinking about the urban design of the street. Here's NATO and Barber right here. And I should point out, key is that right now this intersection is an over-under kind of high speed. That is going to get rebuilt with the Southwest Corridor project into an at-grade intersection controlled by a traffic signal. So that it makes the whole intersection much more accessible for way more users than just cars going 40 to 50 miles an hour. But then looking at the entirety of, well, at least this section of NATO, it kind of lays itself out as like 4 unique sections from an urban design perspective. There's historic district on both sides of NATO here, lots of big trees. It feels like a parkway. So we refer to this as South Parkway. Up on the north of 405, another area, lots of big oak trees, historic. They were planted a long time ago, actually, ironically, with the Harbor Drive Freeway, and are still there, even though the freeway got ripped out. This area has a lot of major mature oak trees. It gives a certain character and feel to that part. So you have these parkway and parkway bookends, but in the middle it gets interesting. So you have a bridge, 405, you're up on structure, retaining walls, another bridge over Kelly and Arthur, more retaining walls until you get to around Hooker Street, where it returns to grade. And then so we refer to that area as a viaduct area, because it's on structure. And then in this area, close to the NUNM campus and where the 2 new streets connect, refer to this area as a core because it's where an opportunity for more intense development and intense activities can happen. So when we think about, looking at this one character area at a time, the North Parkway, and there's a lot of options we're looking at, so I'm just going to walk you through kind of one theme of how it could possibly work. Is when the ramps get rebuilt, we're also going to rebuild this section NATO Parkway. So this is like one massive construction project. So this is NATO Parkway now, and it's right about there, right? So this is a concept for what it could be. And this right here, this is a key point. This idea would extend Better NATO and keep going. So right now, Better NATO is ending around Main Street. So it would pick it up and keep going and extend into the South Portland neighborhood. So that's kind of how it could look in the Parkway area. Next slide. In the viaduct area, it gets really interesting. So this cross section right here is over 405. And yes, there is a long patch over 405. It's a weird thing. I never knew it was there until I actually went out and walked, and I thought, somebody has to mow this grass. Top of I-405, it's kind of weird. But we have an interesting opportunity here because the way the traffic patterns are changing with the ramps and the way things are. So we ended up reducing a lot of the traffic demand between 405 and where these new ramps come in. So actually, we only really need one lane in each direction to carry the traffic demand. So right now, what we're proposing, and this is a turn lane, but this is one lane in each direction. We're looking at an idea of pushing the traffic over to the west. And so, oh, that leaves a half the road to the east. Oh, we'll just maybe it can be for all bike and peds, like half the road. So it's extending, you know, this idea of better NATO into like, now it's like half of the street. So this is, again, this is a concept. This is something we're going to look at, but we have a lot of right of way to work with. And we're actually pretty giddy about it because this is not a situation we're used to having. We're used to having like little right of way where we need more, but this is, we have a lot. And we have opportunities to think about the best way to use it. Okay, next slide. All right, looking a little further down in the transition area, the existing section, it's up on structure. And it could be that somewhere we call this the transition area because an east side better NATO concept could shift over to the west, and there's rationale for that. But so what this section shows is a two-way bike facility on the west side in this section. All right, next slide. Okay, now in the core area, this is the existing cross section, and there's frontage roads on either side of NATO. I'm sure you're familiar with that. But now we're in the core area. We're looking at potential redevelopment on the west side. We have one lane. Actually, we have two lanes in southbound. We're just north of where the Ross Island Bridge connections tie in. So we have one lane northbound, two southbound. We have the on-street parking, two-way bike facility on the west side. And the reason why we're thinking about the west side is that way we don't have two-way bike facility cutting across those two major turn movements on and off of the Ross Island Bridge. So we're just putting the bikes on the other side. It has some less complex. We have a lot of studying to do to figure out if that is the best move, but I'm just walking through an idea from north to south. Okay, next slide. Then we get down into, which is the South Parkway area. Bigger tree, this is what it looks like now. Lots of spaces for cars. And the concept would be, you have the two-way bike facility still on the west side. You have two lanes in each direction. This is carrying traffic to Ross Island Bridge and from the Ross Island Bridge. So there's a need for that much capacity. But there's pleasant places to walk. I don't know if you've ever walked out there now. It's not fun. It doesn't feel good. This would be a much more pleasant walking experience for the neighborhoods that are adjacent to the road. Next slide. Okay, this is where it gets fascinating and super interesting. So down at the end of the South Parkway section, this is where bike and pedestrian and multimodal facilities need to blend in with how the new Barber cross section is going to work. So Barber right now has directional bike facilities on each side. That's proposed with the light rail. So right now, any one of three concepts can work. This concept represents directional bike facilities that can tie into Barber. And as I mentioned, this is a signalized intersection. So there'll be a signal phase for bikes to get across the street. It could be directional. It could be, two-way bike facility on the east side. It could be a two-way bike facility on the west side. There's ways to make any one of these three work. It gets complicated with the signal phasing right here because this signal is going to be talking to these signals. And so the safest possible way to get the most amount of bikes through and the most amount of pedestrians across all these streets is going to be really important. So we're looking at how everything is moving and how to, make NATO Parkway into more of a main street that serves all these neighborhoods. Next slide. So it's kind of fun because in my role in PBOT, I'm working on the Southwest Corridor project almost half time. I work on the Ross Island Bridgehead just about the other half of the time. And so there's a lot of interconnection between the two. And I think what this slide shows is I showed you this before about all these new traffic signals. This is going to change the way this neighborhood moves around. Southwest Corridor, this is from the conceptual design report. Imagine Barber now put two light rail in the middle. That's going to have a lot of changes to how the side streets work. So imagine the light rail here, these new traffic signals here. It's a lot of change for South Portland. It's a lot of improvements for South Portland, like managing regional traffic instead of having regional traffic cut through neighborhoods. This is much more about moving people than it is now. And it's also about providing people access to get to where they want to go and not have to rely on a car. But this is an example of the integration between the Southwest Corridor project, the Ross Island Bridgehead, NATO Parkway project, of how we're working together basically on a daily basis, I think. All right, next slide. That's it. Okay.
Do you guys have any questions for Fiona or Patrick?
Yeah.
Raise your hand and we'll be
Next slide. We can let it rest on the last slide because it shows both our projects.
over there.
I have a simple question. One related to funding as far as like what's the next steps, and then the other for this specific project. And the other one is the traffic signals south of the interchange. Is that to get the bicycles across, or is that just what you project that it will need?
Okay. Want me to take the funding part? You take the traffic part?
Sure.
Or we can.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Funding part. So both of these projects are major line items for the November 2020 regional investment measure that's will be put forth for the voters in November on election day. So it'll be an opportunity to fund these two projects, and these are separate projects. So the regional funding measure has 13 major projects across the entire region. This is two of them. So Ross Island Bridgehead and NATO is one project, and then Southwest Corridor Light Rail project is another that's included in that bundle. So that's where a majority, for the Ross Island Bridgehead project, it's where a majority of the funding is coming from. For the Southwest Corridor project, it is a major component of the funding package for Southwest Corridor, so it's a bigger regional project.
And then, sorry, your question about traffic signals, which is how they're coordinated.
Yeah, like I can understand the need for the ones at the interchange, but the ones south of there, they're gonna be new. Is that to get bicyclists across the intersection, or is that just?
Oh, like at Gibbs and Whitaker? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, so at Gibbs, two things. One is to Gibbs Street, this traffic signal. Yes, it allows people to get across the street. Huge, because they can't do that today. But it also allows people who are in vehicles to get out of this neighborhood. And it allows people who are on the other side of NATO to cross and have the kind of connectivity that they don't have today. This signal at Whitaker right now, it is a pedestrian crossing only. So it's like a pedestrian half signal, ped activated button. So that's what that signal represents. So as much as these signals, people look at signals and they think traffic, these were also pedestrian bike opportunities to cross the street that doesn't exist today.
And I would also just add that there's a really important connection from, so if our Markham Hill is up here, we have a connector down to Gibbs Station
Right.
here. There's actually a Southwest Trail that goes all the way to the waterfront, up and over Darlene Hooley to the Lima. So we are trying to make sure we know where all those really important.
Right. Yeah, Gibbs Street will be a major east-west pedestrian crossing all the way from Terwilliger, all the way down to, actually all the way down to the Willamette River.
And we got a question from online over here.
Yeah, how do you respond to questions or criticisms from people who decry their loss of lanes for cars so that bikes and pedestrians can gain better access to these paths?
Well, I'd say.
I'm on the jump.
We've had an interesting, so I don't know how in touch you are with this project, but we had an interesting exercise about 6 months ago where we were trying to reduce the project cost, project impact, displacements, etc. So we actually asked the region, would you actually be willing to give up those 2 lanes in each direction for a tighter footprint, save a lot of money? And basically what we heard from a lot of outreach was no. Everyone has their own opinion about which mode they use, but it's a real balance of trying to make sure that we are letting all modes be able to operate. So one of the things that we actually think about with a big project like this is person throughput. So like you only have so much space, the region is growing, how do you actually maximize the utility of that corridor? So thinking about just the efficiency of mass transit versus personal automobile. What is the actual push increase that we're getting through there? So in some of our estimates, we have about 150% increase of people moving through that corridor with the increase of bike lanes, sidewalks, transit. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I would just say that with the Ruston Bridgehead and Nato Parkway improvements, the right-of-way, it's an old highway section right-of-way. So as I mentioned before, there's a lot of right-of-way for us to work with. So we're able to add in bike and pedestrian facilities that aren't there now. And we're still working out the numbers in the analysis, but the potential traffic impacts will be carry the similar amount of capacity of vehicles. It could operate, I think, a little bit better with the traffic signals and the way that meters the flows rather than the over-unders and all the merging. And also because of the way that we split the traffic demand up versus south and the east-west, it helps make the traffic, move better.
Question about the potential development on those what will be new lots. You mentioned grocery store to serve what is a food desert now. Do you see that being like the first of its kind private-public partnership? Like how has that conversation happened with this is new land, the city owns it. If we get the usage we want, this is what we're willing to essentially give the land for. And same goes when we talk about the potential for housing on those lots. Are we talking the same type of situation where this is the particular form we want the housing to take? If you're willing to build it, we'll give you the land. What are we looking at there? And if the funding measure doesn't go through, if Southwest Corridor doesn't happen, what is the likelihood of still making this project happen, potentially offsetting the cost with the sale of that?
Right. Okay. Excellent.
I understand that.
Excellent questions. I can't get too far out of my lane, no pun intended, but the use of those public parcels, there's a lot, that's going to be a longer play. It could go on longer than it takes to, if the regional investment measure passes, all these improvements could be done before those 3 acres of land get developed. However, there's a lot of interest in how that could play out. That really happens with the Bureau of Planning and with other potential agencies that are interested. Maybe Prosper Portland is interested, maybe Portland Housing Bureau is interested. All three of those players are in conversations about how this could play out, but the bottom of it is public land. So getting the land, that part has been done. How it's going to get used and how it plays out is, I wish I had a great answer to give to you, but it's to be determined. And as far as the grocery is something that the neighborhood really wants. Getting the right footprint, scale of grocery in there that kind of serves the neighborhood. We've heard distinctly from the neighborhood. It's really interesting. They said, when we see this area building out, we don't want this to look like Division Street. And we were like, whoa, okay. Like, there's a lot of people like Division Street. And I said, no, Division Street's too high end. I said, we want this to be more organic, more local, something that really serves the neighborhood. Division Street is really like a citywide destination. I mean, lots of people go there. It's fun and exciting. It's well done. But this neighborhood, they're thinking, I don't want to overstate it too much, but they want to keep it local and keep it organic feeling. So it's a powerful notion that they're expressing in these public meetings, and so that's what we're hearing.
Sounds like we will struggle to get sufficient density in that housing to make a significant.
That's
what is being mentioned.
You're putting your finger on a hot button issue about how big could that new development be, how dense. That needs to be worked out. Exactly.
Question right here.
A good train of thought and a related question to that is, as I look at this, presented as making the neighborhood a lot more amenities, much more desirable, fixing a lot of problems in the neighborhoods. And I think that through, and I think, we have pockets of more affordable housing around, and for various reasons, usually in the less attractive areas. As you have more and more amenity, you tend to get more and more expensive housing. So my question is, did you think about what does this impact on affordability? Because I would predict a very different neighborhood and a much more expensive neighborhood if you had all these amenities. And you said the neighborhood would like something, but it seems to me much more powerful is the infrastructure to build will probably drive. So have you thought about all of that?
Oh yeah. How infrastructure facilities impact and influence gentrification and pricing people out. Fiona and I and our project teams and the Bureau of Planning and the city and all our city commissioners, this is a hot topic issue about how to keep Portland a place where people can live. And, the way that these 3 acres could build out, I think would have to represent the best intent of our current planning, which is to make Portland, not only preserve the affordable housing opportunities that are there now as best we can, but also to build new affordable housing into the future. Things are going to grow and change. That's going to happen. But to your point, we have to do it in a way that allows people to be able to live in the neighborhood and not get priced out. So we're learning those lessons. I don't have the perfect answer for you, but I hear you, and we want to head in that direction.
We have time for one more question, and we'll finish with a question from online here.
Did you consider design features to accommodate automated vehicles as a future requirement?
Yes, so we are definitely thinking about, we know heads and bikes and cars all exist and buses too. There's obviously a huge suite of new mobility strategies. So thinking about scooters and e-bikes and AVs and how we're actually going to adapt those with our project as it grows. So it's a huge question mark. We're definitely trying to make sure our station areas are flexible so that as the technologies change, we can change with it. I will say that we have been studying a potential AV connector up to from 53rd Station on Barber Boulevard all the way up to the PCC Slovenia campus. Again, there's lots of topography like the rest of the corridor. So how can something like that actually help make that a more comfortable and accessible link between the two?
Well, thank you. Let's give one more round of applause. Just as an announcement of what we're having next, our next speaker is Ann Fairbairn, and she'll be presenting on the grassroots transportation politics in Bremen and Berlin, a matter of environmental justice. So do join us next time, and you can find our future seminars on our website. Thank you.